Let me tell you how I met my wife, Carol. It wasn't some movie moment with sparks and violins playing in the background. No, it was way more ordinary than that. I was standing in the paint aisle at Home Depot, trying to figure out the difference between eggshell and satin, when this woman next to me said, "You look like you're about to call your mother for advice." I turned, saw this woman in a navy fleece jacket holding a color sample called Seaside Whisper, and just laughed. Not because it was that funny, more because she nailed it. I was actually about to call my mom. That was Carol. She was quick, confident, didn't smile much, but when she did, it felt like something rare and expensive. I asked if she was an interior designer, and she told me, "Nope, just better at pretending I know what I'm doing than you are." And for some reason, I love that. We started dating 3 weeks later. I was 34. She was 31. I had my own handyman business, nothing fancy, but steady work, bathroom remodels, drywall repairs, a little kitchen cabinet magic if you caught me in a good mood. Carol was an insurance claims adjuster, which sounds about as exciting as watching grass grow, but she could talk about car accidents like she was narrating a murder mystery. I used to just sit back and watch her explain how a guy's fender bender turned into a six-figure fraud case. Her brain moved fast, and I liked trying to keep up. We got married a year and a half after that first trip to Home Depot. Nothing big. Courthouse. Her sister snapped photos on her phone. Then we got burgers and milkshakes. We didn't need the show. We just needed each other. Or so I thought. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say our marriage was perfect. It wasn't. But I was happy. Really happy. We had our routines. Sundays were for grocery shopping and bad reality shows. She hated cooking, so I handled dinners. She handled finances, because I hate spreadsheets. We had a rhythm, a way of moving around each other like we were two gears that just fit. It stayed like that for about 5 years. And here's the thing. When a marriage starts to change, it doesn't do it all at once. There's no thunderclap, no dramatic music. It's slow. So slow you almost don't notice. One day you realize she hasn't asked how your day was in a while. One night you realize the way she says good night feels more like a formality than affection. But you don't panic. You tell yourself it's just a phase. People get busy. Work stress, life stress, seasonal depression, Mercury in retrograde. Whatever excuse you need to avoid thinking the worst. You want the truth? I didn't even suspect anything for the first few months. What threw me off was how normal everything seemed. On the surface. Carol still made coffee for me in the mornings. Still asked me to pick up almond milk on the way home. Still said, "Love you," before hanging up the phone. But it was like watching someone act out your marriage. Like she knew the script, but had stopped caring about the meaning behind the words. The first thing that bugged me, really bugged me, was when she started working from home more. She claimed it was a new company policy, post-COVID stuff. I bought it. But then she started locking the office door during her Zoom meetings. Said it was privacy compliance. And yeah, maybe that's normal in some companies. But this wasn't NSA-level work. It was fender benders and flood claims in suburban cul-de-sacs. Still, I let it go. I told myself not to be that guy, the jealous husband who questions every little thing. I mean, Carol had never given me a reason to doubt her. Not once in 5 years. Then came the yoga classes. She started going to this Restore and Rebalance studio twice a week. Nothing weird about that. Except Carol hated yoga. She used to mock it. "Yoga is just expensive stretching," she once told me. So I asked what changed. She said she wanted to try something new, reconnect with her body, or whatever. Okay, fine. But then she started coming home later. Said she was grabbing drinks after class with the girls. I never met these girls. Never saw a group chat with their names. And once, I noticed her yoga mat still in the back seat of her car the morning after she'd supposedly gone. Again, I didn't push. I chalked it up to forgetfulness. A missed detail. But let me tell you what really started to gnaw at me. It wasn't her phone. She never left it lying around, sure, but she wasn't shady with it either. It wasn't the late nights or the vague explanations. It was the fact that Carol, my Carol, stopped arguing with me. You don't realize how healthy arguments are until they disappear. I'd say something snarky, and she'd just smile and nod. I'd suggest something dumb like repainting the guest room navy. And instead of launching into her usual Navy's too dark monologue, she'd say, "Sure, whatever you want." Carol never said whatever you want. She always had an opinion. And I loved that about her. She challenged me. She made me justify my half-baked ideas. But suddenly, she was just agreeable. like she didn't have the energy to pretend to care anymore. One night, I came home early from a drywall gig and found her standing in the backyard, staring at the fence. Just standing there, arms crossed, not doing anything. I asked what she was doing, and she said, thinking about adding a raised garden bed. We live in a townhome. No yard. Just a narrow strip of mulch and a fake wooden fence we're not even allowed to nail into. I laughed, waiting for her to admit she was joking. She didn't laugh. The next day, she ordered a garden bed kit from some overpriced catalog and left it sitting unopened in the garage for the next 3 weeks. Never even tried to assemble it. Like she just needed to buy the idea of change, not the thing itself. That's when I started paying attention. Not to the big stuff, the vague yoga class, the late work meetings, the locked office door, but to the in-between. The gaps, the missed cues, the pauses too long, the smiles too quick, the way she sometimes hesitated before saying my name like she had to remember who she was talking to. And then one Saturday, we were cleaning out the guest closet, and I found something that changed everything. Not the way you'd think. Not a receipt or a letter or a second phone. Nothing that obvious. It was a box. Just a cardboard box labeled office. I opened it. Inside were old claim forms, outdated training manuals, and a small stack of thank you cards. All from clients, I assumed. Generic stuff. Thanks for your help with the roof inspection. Appreciate the fast turnaround. That sort of thing. But one card stood out. It was blank on the outside. No company logo, no return address. Just a plain card with a single sentence written inside. You were right. That cabin in Vermont was the perfect escape. T. No date. No full name. No return address. And Carol? She's never mentioned Vermont. We've never been to Vermont. And we sure as hell don't know anyone who signs with just T. I didn't say anything right away. I just closed the box, put it back, and smiled at Carol like nothing was wrong. Because now, I was paying attention. And let me tell you something. The worst part of being lied to isn't the lie itself. It's the moment you realize someone you trust is looking you in the eyes and pretending they don't know what they're doing. So no, I didn't blow up. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I started watching. Closely. Because if she thought I was just the guy who calls his mom about paint colors, she had no idea what I was really capable of. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I'll give Carol this much. She was smooth. The kind of smooth you don't get from lying once or twice. This was polished. Rehearsed. Like she'd practiced making me believe everything was fine so long, it became muscle memory. After I found that Vermont card, I didn't react. I didn't bring it up. I played the dumb husband part to perfection. Nodded when she talked, laughed when she made a joke, folded towels the way she liked, triple fold, then in half. I even asked about her garden box, like I cared. I became the husband I knew she expected to see, so I could watch her closer without setting off alarms. And I started noticing the cracks. They were tiny at first. Things I never would have thought twice about if I hadn't been looking. Her laptop always closed when I walked in, even if she'd been using it. Her sudden interest in podcasts on self-reinvention. The way she'd drift off during conversations like her mind was somewhere else, with someone else. I kept thinking about that note. That damn T. I couldn't shake it. Vermont. A cabin. That wasn't a metaphor. That was real. Specific. And it had weight behind it. Someone had been there with her. And I wasn't that someone. But I still had no proof. Nothing to go on. No phone evidence. No lipstick on a collar. No mysterious charges on the credit card. Then I got lucky. And when I say lucky, I mean the universe dropped a hammer in my lap and said, "Here you go, Kenneth." Smash the illusion. It started with Carol's printer. We had a home office setup, one of those all-in-one inkjets that only worked when it felt like it. Carol had been complaining about it jamming for weeks, so I offered to replace it. She said no. She had it under control. One Thursday afternoon, she left for yoga, or wherever the hell she was actually going, and I decided to take a look. Maybe it really was just paper jams. Maybe I was being paranoid. So I opened the tray. No jam. Opened the back panel. Nothing there. Then I looked inside the scanning bed and found the draft tray. Now here's a thing most people don't realize. Those office printers, even cheap ones, have memory. Not much, but just enough to hold a few pages in the copy queue or reprint history. It's a small feature, buried in the settings, usually used by people printing the same form over and over. I clicked into it. There were 6 saved jobs, all marked from Carol's PC, all printed in the last month. The first 3 were work stuff, accident reports, standard forms. But the fourth one? A 2-page document titled Expense Summary, Killington. I froze. Killington, Vermont. I opened the file. It was a breakdown of shared costs, rental, gas, groceries, wine, activities. 2 names listed on the Excel spreadsheet, Carol Hensley and Thomas Rayburn. Thomas. I didn't recognize the name, but the email address under it? That was a university domain, Champlain College. Why was my wife splitting travel expenses with a man from a college she had no connection to? I dug deeper. The 5th file was a scanned image of a Welcome to the Retreat brochure. One of those fancy, off-the-grid wellness cabins, the kind with organic linens and meditation bells and wood-burning hot tubs. The 6th? A printed photo. I didn't even know she'd printed photos. It was 2 wine glasses on a porch railing, snow in the background. Bare trees. Vermont, without a doubt. You couldn't see anyone in the picture, but it wasn't a stock photo. The timestamp was visible in the corner. January 14th, 8:43 p.m. That's the weekend she told me she had an off-site team-building event in Albany. I sat down, just stared at the printer like it had slapped me. No phone snooping. No dramatic slip-ups. No confession. She printed her lie. Right here. In our house. On our printer. I didn't even feel angry yet. I felt insulted. She thought I was that dumb. That I'd never look. That I'd stay in my handyman bubble and let her little romantic spa weekend slide under the radar. I spent the next hour online. Thomas Rayburn. Faculty directory. Turns out he was a visiting lecturer in business psychology. Specializes in workplace stress, employee burnout, emotional disengagement. He had a little smile in his photo like he was proud of knowing things no one else knew. And he was single. No wife. No kids. Lived in Burlington. I sat there, reading his profile like I was reading a case file. So this was the guy? The guy who got my wife to pretend yoga was real, who got her to nod at me with a smile while picturing someone else. He probably quoted some study about emotional needs during transitional life phases, and boom, Carol was packing up a fleece and heading to Vermont. I wanted to call him, or drive up there, but I didn't. Not yet. Because the thing about being betrayed is, once you know it's happening, you don't react, you observe. You store it. You gather everything. And then you act smart. The next week, I played it normal. Asked her how yoga was. She said they were doing deep release work. I smiled and said, "That sounds intense." She nodded like she was enlightened. I made dinner. I kissed her cheek. I folded more towels. But now I watched for patterns. I took notes. Literally. I started a notes app on my phone titled Project Clarity. Every time she mentioned work travel, I logged it. Every yoga class. Every staying late for reports. I mapped her movements with the quiet patience of someone building a case. Then came the break I didn't expect. It was April, and Carol had a Zoom meeting she couldn't miss. Her laptop started giving her trouble, something with the audio. She asked to borrow mine, my old Dell I use for contractor invoices. I cleaned it up and handed it over, knowing she'd probably log into her browser out of habit. And she did. I waited until she went back to her own machine and forgot to log out. Gmail. She wasn't dumb. There was no email trail between her and Thomas. But she'd left something behind anyway. A folder, buried deep, titled Hikers United. I opened it. Inside, photos. From Killington. From somewhere else. Lake George, maybe? She and Thomas, in what looked like a treehouse rental. They weren't kissing. No compromising photos. But they were together. Sitting side by side, wine in hand. Her head tilted toward him. His fingers brushing her knee. Not posed. Not staged. Real. There was also a spreadsheet titled 2024 Escape Plan. Sounded dramatic, but I opened it anyway. It was a timeline. June, official separation begins. July, Kenneth moves out, amicable. August, Vermont transition. September, cabin search plus consulting relocation. I stared at it, so long the screen dimmed. She had it all mapped out. The soft exit. The fake counseling suggestion. The "it's not you, it's time for me to grow" speech. I was a bullet point in her spreadsheet. Kenneth moves out, amicable. I didn't feel broken. I didn't even feel rage. I felt clear. Because here's the thing. When someone shows you how little you mean in their future, you stop trying to fit into it. I closed the laptop. Made myself a sandwich. Ate it standing at the sink, watching the backyard she never planted anything in. She came home that night and told me about a new breathwork intensive she wanted to sign up for in June. I nodded and said, "Sounds like you've got a whole plan going." She laughed. "That's what I do." And I smiled, because now I had a plan too. And mine wasn't in a spreadsheet. It was in motion. Here's the thing about pretending everything's fine when it's absolutely not. After a while, it gets easier. Like holding your breath underwater. At first, it burns. Your body screams for air. But then your mind starts playing tricks on you. Tells you it's peaceful down there. Tells you not to surface. I guess that's what I'd been doing for the past few weeks. Living in the stillness under the surface, watching Carol float above me, oblivious. But I was done pretending. I just needed to pick the moment. You don't drop something like this casually, especially not when your wife has a whole Google Doc dedicated to your eventual disappearance. It was a Saturday morning when I made up my mind. I woke up, rolled over, and watched Carol scroll through her phone like she always did. I watched her smile at something, probably a text from T, and then I watched her glance at me with that tight-lipped expression she used to reserve for uninvited guests and slow waiters. That was the moment I decided, not just to confront her, but to do it my way. But first, I needed a little insurance. So I went and did something I never thought I'd do. I called my sister, Denise. Now, Denise and I aren't close. We're not enemies, but she's the kind of person who always thinks every situation is a crisis waiting to happen. Still, she works in HR for a law firm and knows people. More importantly, she knows how to handle documentation, which is what I needed. I told her enough to get her attention, left out the Vermont details, the spa retreat, and the spreadsheet roadmap to my eviction. Just said I had reason to believe Carol was stepping out, and I needed to know how to cover myself legally in case things got messy. Denise didn't gasp or get weepy. She just said, "Finally." I asked what that meant, and she replied, "Kenneth, come on. The way she talks to you, I've been waiting for you to notice she thinks you're furniture." It stung, but she wasn't wrong. Denise put me in touch with a guy named Elias who, according to her, helps with this kind of thing. That's code for divorce lawyer who doesn't blink when the stories get weird. Elias was calm, thorough, and didn't waste time. "Don't confront her yet," he said. "You want control? Then you gather everything. Every trip, every financial trail. Get ahead of the narrative. You want to be the calm, rational guy who saw it coming and didn't take the bait." I told him about the printer files, the expense spreadsheet, and the cabin photo. He said it was a good start. Then he asked a question I hadn't considered. "Has she touched your joint accounts recently?" I said no. "She handles the bills, but leaves the savings alone." "Start checking," he said. "If she's planning a clean break, she's going to make a move before June." And just like that, I had a new objective. It didn't take long. That night, after she fell asleep watching an episode of Succession she pretended to like, I logged into our online banking. There it was, a $9,000 transfer, out of our joint savings, into an account I didn't recognize. I didn't get mad. I just took a screenshot. Then I checked the transactions. 3 payments to something called Lakeshore Consulting. Not a real business. I Googled it. Nothing came up. Just a vague LLC out of Vermont. I didn't need to guess. That was the fund for her transition. I printed it, stapled it to the Vermont retreat invoice I'd saved, put it in a folder marked Carol's exit plan, and slipped it under the lining of my tool chest, right next to a box of finished nails and a rusted wrench I never threw out. And then I waited. Not long. Just 2 days. That's when Carol made her move. She came home early from yoga and said we needed to talk. She was calm. Too calm. Like she was about to break up with a coworker after a casual fling. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands folded like she was on a panel. "I've been thinking," she began, "that we've grown apart." I didn't flinch. Just nodded. "I'm not blaming you," she said. "It's just, people evolve. And sometimes that evolution leads us in different directions." I swear, it was like listening to a PowerPoint presentation on emotional distance. She went on for a while. Talked about needing space and reassessing priorities. She even threw in the classic, "I still care about you deeply." That's when I spoke. "Carol," I said, "how long have you been rehearsing this?" Her eyes twitched for half a second. "Not long, but enough." "I'm not rehearsing," she replied, too quickly. "I've been thinking about it for a while." "How long?" She hesitated. "A few months." January 14th, ring a bell. Silence. She blinked. Swallowed. "I don't know what you mean. That's the day you went to Albany, right?" "Yes," she said carefully. "For work." "Except you weren't in Albany." I stood up, walked to the kitchen, grabbed the manila folder from behind the coffee maker, Elias's suggestion. Keep it close. Use it when you're ready. I walked back and placed it on the coffee table. Carol stared at it like it was a bomb. I'm not going to yell, I said. I'm not going to throw anything or make a scene. But you are going to look me in the eye and tell me what Thomas Rayburn means to you. Her face drained. That was it. I hadn't mentioned his name before. Not once. Not even hinted at it. But the second I said it, I saw everything. Denial. Panic. And then something else. Resignation. She didn't deny it. Didn't launch into some desperate spin about misunderstanding or emotional support from a mentor. She just sat there. Quiet. So I opened the folder. Expense report from your little Vermont getaway. Photo of the porch. Transfers to that fake consulting business. Oh, and this one's my favorite. The Google Doc with your exit plan. You know, the one where I move out amicably in June. She looked away, rubbed her forehead, tried to summon the version of herself that used to win arguments by sheer exhaustion. You were never supposed to find all that, she finally said. I nodded. No, I'm sure I wasn't. It's not what you think, she added, almost out of habit. Really? Because it looks like you were just waiting for the right moment to slide me out of your life without losing too much in the settlement. Her face twisted. She stood up. This is exactly why, Kenneth. You always think in terms of winners and losers. No, I said. I think in terms of honesty and lies. And you're not exactly batting 1,000 on the honesty front, Carol. She didn't have a comeback. Just stood there, arms crossed, the silence between us like a dead animal rotting in the middle of the room. You could have just told me, I said. Months ago, before the spreadsheets, before the yoga lies. Hell, before Vermont. You could have said, I'm unhappy. But you didn't. You built a whole escape room and hoped I'd never find the key. She looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in a long time. I didn't want to hurt you. I laughed. Not a big, dramatic laugh. Just a dry, bitter sound from the back of my throat. You didn't want to hurt your plan. She sat back down. Quiet again. I could see her recalculating. Trying to salvage it. Maybe pivot to therapy. Suggest a trial separation. Something soft. Palatable. Manageable. But I beat her to it. We're done, Carol. And not in June. Not on your timeline. Not on some shared Google Calendar. You don't get to script the ending. Not anymore. She opened her mouth. I raised my hand. No more talking. Not tonight. I've got one more folder. It's with my lawyer. And it includes everything you left breadcrumbs for. I suggest you call someone. Because this isn't going to end the way you planned. And with that, I left the room. Not the house. Not yet. I went to the garage. Sat on the workbench. Stared at the drywall patch job I did 2 years ago after Carol knocked over the shelving unit during one of her decluttering phases. I didn't feel good, but I felt clear. And sometimes that's enough. Because the next part was mine. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. I just sat in the garage with my thermos of lukewarm coffee and the smell of sawdust and motor oil, thinking about every time Carol had looked me in the eye and lied. About Vermont. About yoga. About being happy. About everything. But what stuck with me wasn't the betrayal. It was the structure of it. The spreadsheet precision. The calendar invites she'd made in her head. I was a placeholder in her plan. Just a detail she meant to resolve like a task on a to-do list. That was the part that lit the fuse. See, there's something about being treated like a logistical inconvenience that makes a man want to become a complication. So that morning, while Carol was upstairs pretending to get ready for work, I knew she wouldn't actually go. I pulled out my tablet and fired off 2 emails. One to Elias, my lawyer, titled Greenlight, and one to Carol's boss, a very formal HR director named Nadine who I'd met once at their company's holiday mixer, titled, For Your Awareness, Lakeshore LLC. Because what Carol didn't know, what she'd failed to calculate in her neat little departure chart, was that her consulting side arrangement with Thomas Rayburn, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was fraud. See, Carol had used our joint account to pay business expenses for a shell company, and she had submitted one of those Lakeshore invoices for reimbursement. I know because I found the duplicate filed in the work docs folder she kept on the shared desktop like I wouldn't notice. The genius had billed her employer for a romantic spa weekend under the guise of client strategy retreat, confidential. She got reimbursed $1,100. That's theft. Corporate fraud. And no HR director in the country likes being blindsided by an ethics violation from a senior adjuster with 8 years at the firm. The moment I hit send, I felt it. This wasn't revenge for revenge's sake. It wasn't petty. It wasn't vindictive. It was strategic, surgical. Because if Carol wanted to play life like a management plan, I was going to be the unscheduled outage. An hour later, Elias called. "It's done," he said. "I filed the preliminary divorce paperwork this morning. They'll serve her within 48 hours. Make sure it's at the house," I said. "I want her to sign for it herself." I figured. Then I drove to the bank, opened a new personal account, transferred my half of the savings into it, every penny that hadn't been funneled into her Vermont Vision Fund. I even left a note in the joint account memo field that just said, "Not amicable." Then I did the one thing I knew would really hit her where it hurt. I canceled the kitchen remodel. Now, this might sound trivial, but let me explain. Carol had been obsessing about the kitchen for months. Pinterest boards, sketches, backsplash tile samples, and 7 shades of storm gray. She called it the final upgrade before she listed the house, something she didn't know I knew. The contractor? A guy I'd referred. A friend. I called him and said, "Cancel the job. Do not call her. Do not show up." He laughed, said, "Got it." Then I called my buddy Carl, old friend, owns a moving company, and scheduled a full pack service for the following Monday. Not my stuff. Hers. See, Carol had planned for me to move out, for me to be the one to disappear quietly and leave the narrative in her control. But I'd be damned if I was going to let her keep the house, the furniture, and the moral high ground in one clean motion. So I flipped the board. I wasn't just leaving. I was removing her. That night, she came home early. No yoga, no excuses. Just walked into the kitchen like she hadn't been caught building a secret exit on company time. Her face was tight. No makeup. She looked like someone who'd spent the day getting very bad news. "Did you email my boss?" she asked, skipping all pleasantries. I poured myself a glass of water, took a long sip, looked her straight in the face. Yep. Her nostrils flared. "You had no right." "Actually, I did. Joint account. My money. Your invoice. But go ahead, Carol. Try to spin it. I'll wait." She stared at me, searching for an angle. But there wasn't one. She knew it. "You don't get to ruin my life just because you're hurt." "Hurt?" I laughed. "No, Carol. I'm not hurt. I'm insulted. You thought you were smarter than me. That's what really pisses you off, isn't it? That I figured it out before your little timeline kicked in." She didn't respond. I continued. "And by the way, the divorce papers are coming. You'll be served this week. Don't worry, I didn't put infidelity on the record. But if you keep pushing, I'll have no problem submitting the full documentation, expense reports, email records, and all the cozy brochures." She finally sat down, right there on the bar stool she'd picked out at HomeGoods last year, like she was designing a life I was never meant to stay in. "So what now?" she said quiet. "You move out. Monday. Movers will pack your things. I've labeled your stuff. Don't touch mine. You can't kick me out of my own house." "No, but I can make sure you don't stay in it. I already paid the next mortgage payment and froze the equity line. You'll get your half eventually. My lawyer's taking care of the appraisal and split." She blinked. "Once. Twice. You've been planning this. Since the printer, Carol." Silence. And then, the thing I expected least. She started to cry. Not sobbing. Not dramatic. Just quiet tears sliding down her face, like she didn't even want me to see them. I watched her reach for the hem of her sleeve and dab at the corner of her eye, like she was embarrassed it was happening. "You really hate me," she said. I shook my head. "No, I just finally see you." She stood up, walked out of the kitchen. I heard the bedroom door click shut, then the shower, and I didn't follow. I sat at the kitchen island and stared at the empty space where the new quartz countertop was supposed to go. Funny, I thought. That counter was never about cooking. It was about listing photos. By Monday, the movers showed up. Professional guys. Respectful. Carl sent his best crew. I didn't want this to feel like an eviction, even though that's what it was. Carol didn't say much. She watched as they packed her books, her office supplies, the framed abstract art she bought during her creative phase. The only time she spoke was to ask where the movers were taking her things. "To your sister's," I said. I asked her. She agreed. Her jaw clenched. She didn't say thank you. Didn't say anything. When they left, she stood in the doorway for a second, keys in hand. "This was supposed to be cleaner," she said. I smiled. It is now. And with that, she left. No hugs. No goodbyes. No second chances. She left the key on the porch, tucked under the planter she always forgot to water. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, I breathed. Not deep. Not dramatic. Just a real breath. Because I'd been underwater too long. And I wasn't going to drown for her plan. Now, I was writing my own. It had been 4 days since Carol moved out. 4 days of strange silence in the house. No blow dryer humming from the bathroom at 6:30 a.m. No coffee cup with lipstick on the rim sitting by the sink. She didn't take everything. The couch was still here, her running shoes were still by the garage door, and half of her frozen meals were still in the freezer like she'd just forgotten them. Like she expected to swing by later and pick up where she left off. I left everything untouched. I didn't want revenge anymore. That part was already done. The strategy had been executed. The fraud exposed. The movers called. She was out. Her employer was already investigating her expense reports, and Elias had confirmed that Carol's legal team had reached out with a revised posture, which is lawyer speak for, they just realized how much leverage you have. But closure? That was something else. I needed to talk to her. Not to yell, not to demand anything, not to make her feel worse than she already did. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need her to cry or explain her emotional journey. I'd heard enough TED Talk therapy buzzwords from her over the past 6 months to last me the rest of my life. What I needed was to say what I hadn't said. So I sent her a message. Meet me at the house. Friday night. 1 hour. Then we're done. She replied in under 2 minutes. Okay. She came at 6:45. Right on time. Carol never ran late. Not even when she was cheating on me. She walked up the steps slowly, carrying a box. I opened the door and stepped aside, letting her in without saying a word. The house was dim. Just a few lamps on. I'd left the place quiet on purpose. Neutral. Not inviting, not cold. Just neutral. She walked in and placed the box on the coffee table. I could see it was full of random items, her garden gloves, a few books, a jar of face cream, a stack of forwarded mail. You didn't have to pack this, she said softly. I didn't. Movers did. She nodded like she knew that, but wanted to say something anyway. We stood there, not saying much. She looked around the living room, her eyes landing on the now empty bookshelf where her travel guides used to be. Then she sat on the arm of the chair like she used to when she was too tired to make herself comfortable. I stayed standing. I didn't expect you to do all this so fast, she said. Yeah, well, I replied. Turns out I can get a lot done when I stop waiting for someone else to show up. She winced. Not dramatically, just a twitch at the corner of her mouth. Can I ask you something? She said, after a long pause. You can ask. Doesn't mean I'll answer. She looked up. Why did you blow it all up like that? The job, the money, everything. Because you already had. I just stopped pretending you hadn't. She didn't have a comeback. I walked over to the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water, and brought one back, placing it in front of her. She didn't touch it. You know what the worst part was? I asked, finally sitting down. She shook her head. It wasn't the cheating. It wasn't even that you had a plan to leave. It was that I was just an item on a checklist. You scheduled my exit like you were planning a tire rotation. She flinched at that. I never meant to treat you like that, she said quietly. But you did. And the sad part is, I didn't even notice at first. I thought we were just coasting through a rough patch. Thought maybe we'd go to counseling. Try something new. You were already gone before I even realized we had a problem. I didn't know how to say it, she admitted. You didn't want to. You wanted the clean version. The one where I just faded out without making noise. You didn't want guilt. You wanted convenience. I wasn't trying to replace you, she said. But you were. You found someone else and made a future with him in secret. What is that, if not a replacement? Her voice dropped. It didn't start that way. But it ended that way. Silence again. She reached into the box and pulled out a small envelope. I found this in the drawer, she said, holding it out to me. It was the birthday card I gave her last year. The one where I wrote a full page about how proud I was of her for getting promoted, for managing everything, for being strong. I'd signed it with my usual, to my favorite teammate. I didn't take the card from her. I just looked at it. You didn't even open it that day, I said. You said you'd read it later. I found it still sealed in the drawer 3 months later. I know, she said, ashamed. That's when I knew I was past the point of fixing it. You didn't throw it away, though. I couldn't. We sat there in silence again. Did you love him? I asked, not to punish her, just to know. I thought I might. I don't know anymore. She stopped, then changed course. He wasn't who I thought he was. I nodded. He know you got fired? Her jaw tightened. Yes. What did he say? He said I should have been more careful. That it was sloppy. I laughed once. Short. Cold. That sounds like love. He wants to take a step back. She said it with air quotes. Right, I said. Because guys like that don't deal in consequences. Just options. She looked at me, tears starting to form again. I didn't flinch. Didn't soften. I'm not here to rescue you from that, I said. Whatever you thought you'd find in him, that's yours to live with now. She nodded. Didn't deny it. I just wanted to be seen, she said. To feel like I wasn't invisible. You wanted to be seen? Try being the guy who spent 5 years putting up shelves and cooking dinners and folding towels the way you like, only to find out he was a backup dancer in your solo performance. She looked away. I leaned forward. You want the real answer to your question? Why I blew it up? Because you needed the clean exit. The quiet divorce. The passive drift-apart story you could tell people without being the bad guy. I didn't let you have it. She looked at me again. Not with anger. With something closer to understanding. Maybe even respect. Or the beginning of it. You didn't deserve that, she said. No, I said, standing. I didn't. But you earned this. She picked up the water glass. Drank half of it in one gulp. Then stood. Okay, she said. I'll go. She picked up the box and walked to the door. Stopped. Turned back. Do you think we'll ever talk again? I didn't answer right away. I think we just did. She nodded. Opened the door. Stepped out. Then paused again. Kenneth, she said, without turning. You were never furniture. Yeah, I said. But you rearranged the room like I was. She left. No drama. No final plea. Just a quiet door click, and then her car pulling away down the street. I sat back down. And this time, the silence wasn't strange. It was earned. 3 months later, I came home on a Thursday and noticed the hydrangeas had bloomed along the edge of the fence. Carol had planted them during her Fresh Start Phase 2 summers ago, back when she decided a few decorative shrubs could magically erase all the emotional dead weight we'd stopped unpacking. I used to hate those plants. Now, I couldn't decide if I was supposed to trim them or torch them. I didn't either. I just stood there with a beer in my hand and watched the petals sway, thinking about how it's funny what gets left behind when people go. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. Not by her, at least. The ghosts that stuck around were mine. Quieter, less accusatory. More like the echo of a man who once thought routine meant stability, that familiarity meant loyalty. I still cooked dinner for one. Still folded towels the way I'd learned, though now more out of habit than heartbreak. The couch was in the same spot, but I sat in the middle now. No more saving a side. The divorce finalized a week ago. Elias called to confirm and ended with, "You good?" I said yes, and I meant it. The paperwork had her signature, the bank accounts were split, and the house was officially mine. She didn't contest a thing. Not after everything. I hadn't seen Carol since that final conversation in the living room. Didn't bump into her at the grocery store. Didn't catch her car driving past the house. No dramatic late-night texts. No "I miss you" voicemails. She vanished like a well-planned exit plan demands. Until tonight. I was pulling into the driveway after a job. A kitchen remodel for a divorced guy who had the exact same scowl I probably wore for months. And there she was. Carol, leaning against the railing by the porch. Not dressed up. Just jeans, a windbreaker, hair tied back. No makeup. She looked tired. Not in a collapsed way. More like someone who's done lying to themselves and doesn't know what comes next. I parked the truck, got out, closed the door gently. Is this a visit or a return policy? I asked. She cracked the smallest smile. Neither. Just unfinished business. I nodded toward the porch. Sit down if you're staying. But if you're here to do a dramatic scene, make it quick. I've got leftover pizza and a movie that doesn't require subtitles. She followed me up. We sat down. Same bench where we'd signed the refinance paperwork together 4 years ago. Seemed like a lifetime back when we still talked about shared dreams and not strategic withdrawals. I got a new job, she said after a minute. Oh yeah. Not in insurance. Nonprofit logistics. Smaller team. Less money. Less hiding. Good for you. She nodded. I moved into a studio apartment downtown. Sounds expensive. It is, she said. And small. And loud. But it's mine. Another pause. I didn't come to apologize, she said. Good, I replied. Wouldn't fix anything. But I am sorry, she added softly. Not just about what I did. About how I saw you. How I made you feel like you were standing still when I was the one lying to myself. I took a long breath, let it out slow. You know what the real shame is, Carol? I said. You didn't just lie to me. You lied to yourself so thoroughly that you forgot who I actually was. I wasn't the guy holding you back. I was the guy holding things together while you made up your mind about whether I still mattered. She didn't flinch. She just nodded. That's fair. Yeah, I said. It is. We sat in the silence again. More peaceful this time. Less like a storm brewing, and more like the calm that follows after everything has already been wrecked and cleared. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small envelope. This is the last of the Vermont fund, she said. I got a partial refund from the cabin. Thought you should have it. I stared at the envelope. Keep it. Consider it a down payment on your next bad decision. That actually made her laugh. It was real, too. None of that performative politeness. Still sarcastic. Still breathing. She sighed. You were always the honest one. No, I said. I was the hopeful one. That's worse. She looked at me, really looked. I wasn't good to you, she said. You were complicated, I replied. And I ignored that because I thought we were solid. I mistook time for trust. That's on me. She sat with that, then stood. I won't bother you again, she said. I just needed to say it. Out loud. So it wasn't something I rehearsed in my head forever. You said it. Goodbye, Kenneth. I watched her walk down the steps. She didn't look back. And I didn't want her to. She got into a car I didn't recognize and pulled away without drama, without lingering. I stayed on the porch until the taillights disappeared. Then I went inside, reheated the pizza, and started the movie. Some dumb comedy. It didn't need to be deep. And when I got into bed that night, I laid right in the middle. No more her side and my side. Just a bed, just space, just silence. But this time, the silence didn't hurt. It meant something was over, and something else could finally begin. The thing about being cheated on isn't just the betrayal. It's that for a while, you start to believe you deserved it. That you missed something. That you were blind, or boring, or broken. But eventually, if you're lucky, you figure it out. You weren't the flaw. You were just the mirror someone else didn't want to see themselves in anymore. And now? Now I'm busy building something new. This time, it's not for someone else. It's for me. Subscribe to the channel